Hello, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a video form of a blog post which I wrote in April 2021. It's about Franz Liszt's Symphony to Dante's Divine Comedy. It was part of that year's blogging from A to Z April, where my theme was Dante, his life, his world, things like that, because of the 700th death anniversary. Originally I had shot a version of this video in early January of this year, but unfortunately I was unable to use it because of an issue with the iPad microphone, so hopefully this audio quality will turn out actually usable, unlike the other aborted version. So let's just get down to it. The great Franz Liszt began pulling ideas together for a symphony based on the Divine Comedy in the early 1840s. During summer 1845, Liszt played an improvised version to French poet Joseph Altran on the empty Marseille Cathedral's organ at midnight. Liszt later invited Altran to collaborate on an opera or oratorio inspired by Dante, but Altran didn't follow up on the project. In 1847, Liszt played a few fragments on the piano to his mistress, Princess Caroline zu Wittgenstein. Liszt wanted the music accompanied by a slideshow of Divine Comedy illustrations from German-Italian painter Giovanni Bonaventura Ginelli. Liszt also wanted to use a wind machine to recreate the winds of hell as the first movement concluded. And I know that sounds kind of, like grandiose and like, way too over the top, getting like uppity ideas about, what he can and should do with music. But, of course, Liszt was a genius, so it kind of follows, a genius would want to do something that over the top and, like, perfect and never before done for his music, because, that's just how a genius's mind operates. Though Carolina was more than willing to finance this lofty project, Liszt set it aside till 1855. It should also be noted, in between the time he first got this big idea and the time he actually, put it onto paper and like finished polishing it, he wrote another much shorter and much less ambitious musical work based on the Divine Comedy. It was completed in 1849, and it's popularly known as the Dante Sonata, but its full name is Après une lecture du Dante. Fantasia quasi sonata, which means in French, after a lecture or a reading of Dante, Fantasia quasi sonata. It's a piano sonata in one movement, and it was first published in 1856 as part of the second volume of Liszt's Années de Pèlerinage, Years of Pilgrimage. It was obviously inspired by the Divine Comedy as well, but much, much less ambitious than the full, long symphony, which he later wrote in at least one of the available versions of the incredible 1921 film, The Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, which gave my favorite actor Rudolph Valentino his big break. You can hear this as part of the soundtrack music used throughout the film, which is, kind of really appropriate. I wish, they had actually used the full symphony as part of the soundtrack music for that film as well, because it's just, incredible, and it fit incredibly well with it. Now you can look the Dante Sonata up on YouTube. It's very short, quick to listen to, and now later on I'll be playing a bit of the full symphony if you're interested. In June 1855, Liszt went back to work on his symphony with a vengeance and finished most of it before the end of 1856. Simultaneously, he was working on his famous Faust Symphony. These are the only two known symphonies Liszt ever composed. Liszt visited Richard Wagner in October 1856 in Zurich, where he played both symphonies on the piano. Wagner wasn't wild about the conclusion and told Liszt so in no uncertain language. Liszt agreed with this point of view and said he also had wanted to end it on a fine soft shimmer, but Carolina convinced him to end with a huge dramatic flourish. Liszt rewrote the ending music, but for the printed score, he gave conductors the option of following the pianissimo coda with the fortissimo one. Though Liszt planned to end a third movement for Paradiso and make it choral, Wagner convinced him it was impossible for any mortal composer to possibly come even close to accurately depicting paradise. Liszt instead added a choral Magnificat at the conclusion of the second movement. By not going all the way, some listeners and critics alike feel the symphony is unbalanced and ends on an unfinished note, an unnecessary cliffhanger. Liszt scholar Humphrey Searle also argued that translating paradise into music wouldn't have automatically been too great a task for him, and obviously Dante does it very well in his poem, and many other people throughout the centuries have, kind of tried to depict paradise, what they imagine paradise to be like in, works of poetry, prose, film, music, so you can't really say like, oh, it would be completely possible for you because you're not in paradise and you're just immortal. Obviously, you can't like accurately depict. Nobody will know exactly what it's like until we are there. Hopefully, only until after we've reached 120 years. But it's not totally impossible for mortals to depict it. And it's kind of unfair to say, oh, just leave it alone because you don't know exactly what paradise is like. And I really wish she had gone all the way and depicted paradise. Liszt completed and polished the symphony in autumn 1857, and it premiered at Dresden's Hoftheater, which was later destroyed by fire and rebuilt as the Semperoper on the 7th of November 1857. Due to not enough rehearsing, it didn't go very well, and Liszt, who conducted, was publicly humiliated. Despite this, he soldiered on and conducted it again in Prague on the 11th of March 1858 with two of his other works. Carolina drew up a program for the audience so they could more easily follow along with this unusually structured symphony. Some people classify a symphony to Dante's Divine Comedy, better known simply as the Dante Symphony, as more of two connected symphonic poems than a true symphony in the classical sense. As the genre's name suggests, a symphonic poem musically evokes the mood of a poem, artwork, novel, landscape, short story, play, or other non-musical subject. This symphony is one of the very first pieces of music using progressive tonality, wherein a composition doesn't finish in the key it began, but rather progresses to something entirely different. It also contains many other musical innovations, like fluctuating tempi, wind effects, atonality experiments, and unusual time and key signatures. Liszt scored it for one English horn, two oboes, two flutes, two clarinets, one bass clarinet, one piccolo, doubling as a third flute in the second movement, two bassoons, two tenor trombones, one bass trombone, two trumpets, four horns, one tuba, two harps, two sets of timpani, a tam-tam, a bass drum, cymbals, a harmonium, which is a pump organ, strings, and a women's choir with sopranos and altos. This is a very beautiful piece of music. I'm, surprised I didn't know about it, or at least I don't think I knew about it until last year. It's just so beautiful and dramatic and intense, and the concluding Magnificat is just so beautiful, just emotionally stirring. And as I was rambling earlier, but I really wish she had gone all the way and tried to depict paradise, because obviously Dante depicted it himself, and it really, I don't think, was beyond the reach of any mortal composer, despite what Wagner was convinced of. I hope you enjoyed that preview of the symphony. That's roughly the first 7 minutes of it. It's just really, really beautiful, intense, dramatic, wonderful. You can look it up on YouTube. There are several versions, including one version that has a great slideshow of Gustave Doré's famous woodcuts of the Commedia, and it's just like a wonderful, wonderful piece of music. I'm sorry if I'm rambling, but I just can't recommend it enough. It's just so like great and beautiful. So I really do encourage you guys to check it out if you're interested in classical music, or if you've just never heard it before and want to hear the rest of it and see all the great ideas Liszt translated into music to bring Dante's work to life in this beautiful way. So thank you very much for listening. I do apologize if I rambled a bit too much more than usual during this video. Please consider liking, sharing, subscribing, and commenting. My next video will be on Wednesday, February the 23rd, because that will be Stan Laurel's 57th death anniversary. I believe I will be doing a review of a book by John McCabe called The Comedy World of Stan Laurel. I'm not sure if it's out of print or not, but it's a really cool, neat book about Stan. Not the usual type of book you would expect. Like, it's not a biography of him. It's just mostly about his comedy process and how his mind worked and things like that. His years when he wasn't like working with Oliver Hardy, like in his later life after Ollie had passed on. So look forward to that if you're interested in that kind of thing. And just again, thank you very much for watching and bearing with me as I go through my steep learning curve of learning how to become better at editing and filming. And see you guys again very soon. Thanks. Bye.